right? So now we need to estimate the square root of 75. So I'm going to show you something, it was in one of your videos that you were, that you watched on Edpuzzle, but we haven't gone into the details too much. So the square root of 75. So first of all, you could use the method we've been using so far, okay? Which is think about your perfect square roots. So perfect square roots, so I need to go less than 75. So, 5 times 5 is 25. 6 times 6 is 36. 7 times 7 is 49. 8 times 8 is 64. That's getting close. So I'm going to put 8 here. And that's a square root of 64. Right? And then 9 times 9 is 81. Well, that's a little bit more. So I think, I have narrowed it down. The square root of 75 is somewhere in here, right? So I could pick something in here. Also, I know now that this is less than those other two values because our other two values were 9.85 and 10. So this is obviously less than that, but I'm going to go over how to estimate it to the nearest tenth just for like extra practice. So first of all, right, so we can estimate that and we can test out a couple values, but I want you to see something. This is working towards, higher level 8th grade math and into high school. But when you are simplifying square roots, what you want to do is think if you can divide this into factors that are perfect squares. So hopefully you guys know, like if you think about quarters, right? 3 quarters make 75 cents. So 3 times 25 is 75. So 75 is the same thing as 3 times 25, right? And I know that 25 is a perfect square. You know that 25 is a perfect square, right? And so what we can do is we can break this apart. So if this was a plus, no, you cannot plus it into a perfect square. But multiplication is allowable to break this apart. So this is the same thing as the square root of 3 times the square root of 25. So if you can think of a perfect square. So once the values, these square roots get larger, we want to think of factors that are perfect squares. And so we know the square root of, right? So now this is the square root of 3 times, and we know that the square root of 25 is just 5. So now we just need the square root of 3 times 5. And handily, right, we just did the square root of 3 on the previous problem, right? Which Miss Mills threw away or something. But here we go. I know where I wrote it down. The square root of 3, we just did it right here in this problem, right? The square root of 3 is approximately 1.7, right? So then we can just go ahead and use that value, right? So we can take 3, and we know this is approximately 1.7, so 1.7 times 5, right? And 5 times 1 is 5, and 5 times 7 is 3. 35, right? So I'm going to do a little like number talk here. Times 5 because it's easier for me, right? 5 times 1 is 5. 5 times 7 is 3.5. And so this is 8.5. So the square root of 75, right? The square root of 75, I know is approximately 8.5. Using, it's a little bit different method and using something we already approximated. But you could do this the way that we did on the previous problem as well. Okay, so now let's go ahead and we're going to put that in our note-taking guide here so that this is approximately 8.5. And now we know that the square root of 75 of these values is the least. Pi squared is less than 10. And 10 is the greatest value here. And then if we were to put those on the number line, right, it helps to have those values. So we're going to put those on the number line right here, right? So this was pi squared was a little bit